Welcome to UnstuckAF, a podcast here to help you do you better. There's a path that starts where you are, passes through who you are, and leads where you want to go. We're here to hear from people who've walked that path or who are walking it right now. This is Orlando Bishop, Coach Orlando, and I thank you for listening as we learn how to get unstuck, how to be unstuck, how to live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck. All right, folks, we're bringing you the serious Windsor Hills special. Today, we are having a conversation with my neighbor, my friend, Arian White. For those of you who hang out on my Facebook page, you've seen him come through there and drop some knowledge. I just have a tremendous amount of respect. We've had some good laughs. He loves Ted Lasso, so we know he's official. And but he's out, but really, Arian's been out there winning awards as an educator. He's now got his master's and he's moving into even helping other educators. So I just have a tremendous amount of respect and we've had some great conversations. So Arian, welcome to UnstuckAF. Say hello to the folks.
Hello, thank you. And thank you for the warm, wonderful introduction and all the sentiments right back at you, bro.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I'm really glad we got to do this. So I'm gonna dive in and ask a question, which is how and or when did you know COVID would play a big role in your life?
You know, the irony of it is I literally remember sitting in a classroom and having to explain to kids who were scared, what COVID was going to mean for them. And something in that moment, I was just reassuring, and I kind of believed my own hype in that, there have been other epidemics before, and if it gets very, I just told the kids, if it gets very severe, we're going to know ahead of time. But for right now, you can relax and just take precautions. And when they shut everything down, that was the big, we don't shut down capitalism, right?
Right.
Big, and I'm teaching from home. And so I'm going to say when everything shut down, I was like, this is a crazy pivotal moment in history. And yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to mention that. I still recall that Friday. It was March 13th, and I remember Maya, my child, who wanted to go to school, and I understood in that they were thinking they were going to be away from their friends for a couple of weeks,
Right.
which but I still remember getting the call saying you can come pick me up. And I must have tore a hole in the 10 getting down there to pick Maya up because it really was like, what is going on? So I remember that moment very clearly. Did you have, and you can share, there's some things I've known and talked to you about, but the level that you teach, and you can share that, did you find that folks were bringing information in from home that was impacting the conversation, or was this even too early, for theories? Like, was it just like, whoa, what is this thing?
This was my information. So I teach, at the time I was teaching third graders, so 8 and 9-year-olds. So, I have to be very cautious and we're always aware of their safety in a way. I think that's more intense than like if I were teaching high school or something, right?
Of course.
And I'm sorry, can you ask so the first part was
just did they bring in information, like were you navigating like what my uncle said, or all that kind of stuff?
It was a lot of news. It was a lot of kids watching the news with their parents. So they were as informed as I was. The only difference was I've taught internationally. So I keep in touch with people. Like I know teachers in China, for example. I know teachers in
Mm.
South Korea. So I was hearing, these things like these strange rules like stay 6 feet away from people, and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
that's interesting. But when it's on the internet, it's like I trust them, they're teachers, but it's like, okay, well, how long is that gonna last? Is that cultural change gonna take place over here?
Right, right.
Um, so those were the things I personally had heard from other teachers, and then the kids were just hearing what they saw literally on the news with their parents.
Got it.
Um, and a lot of it was at that particular point, just I don't even know if it was mask yet, but it was just we were gonna have to. There was this idea that we were gonna have to go home. I can't remember when the whole mask thing started.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I'm
don't know
not
if it
sure.
was
I
at
think
the same
actually it was
time.
after. It might have been after we got shut down. But yeah, I'm not.
Right.
I don't remember that. You're right. Or
Right, because it wasn't
yeah.
immediate. It wasn't because I remember when we left, when we were leaving, we left school Friday the 13th. I'll never. It was Friday
Hmm.
the 13th. I can forget.
Right. Right.
And I don't remember us wearing masks or being concerned about masks when that was happening.
That's right.
I feel like
Yeah, I
people
think
were
that's right.
when the whole toilet paper shortage. I feel like that's when I associate the whole mask
Hmm. Yeah,
and
that
going to
yeah, that
grocery
it comes
stores and
across. Hmm.
yeah.
Now you mentioned, by the way, you mentioned teaching abroad. You know, teachers in China. Is that because you taught in China, or you just know people who have moved around and ended up in China?
I taught in the Dominican Republic, but I taught in international school. And long story short, it's a very small world, and
Got
especially
it.
among Black educators. So I know a lot of black educators in Dubai. I know a lot in China. I know a lot, and they know people from all over the world too.
Okay, got it. So that you were able to hear about it that way.
Right.
Yeah, just curious in terms of what you might have heard or experienced in terms of the whole, China virus and all that kind of stuff. Were the teachers concerned that wait a minute, I'm behind, enemy lines, I guess I would call it. I mean, it's a disease, not a war, but yeah.
You know what's weird? Expat teachers are a different breed. I mean,
Mm,
I remember when I went to my job fair for international teaching, there was a young lady who was teaching in Beirut,
mm,
and and she was trying to get me to teach. She's like, "Oh, it's beautiful," blah blah blah. She's like, "I mean, there was a bombing down the street, but it's fine." So to judge things based off an expat's idea
right,
of safety is a little skewed,
right,
I think, based
right,
on
right.
mainstream, right? So a lot of my friends who were in China were just like, "Oh yeah, you just stay 6 feet away." Like they were very nonchalant about it.
Got it. Okay. So it
They were
wasn't
just
like
like, "You
get
gotta
out
follow
of
these
here.
rules," and they were not like, "We got." I'm surprised. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember one teacher going, okay, it's time to leave China. Or, okay, it's time to leave Asia. Because the thing, it
Mm-hmm.
was more like, okay, we're following the rules. We're doing this. It was like,
Right.
yeah,
Now, there are different types of grief, obviously, and I I would think, I taught, I've coached, we've talked about that. The missing the kids is a real thing. Like there are kids, they grown and got their own families now. But like when I taught high school, there are people who I make contact with now, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's been 20 something years. So I'm wondering, it's Monday the 16th. And usually you'd be packing up and running out to your car. We might see each other, wave hello, and get in our
right.
cars and do what we got to do. And suddenly you're not, and you're not seeing your kids, and you're not going through your normal routine. What was that piece like for you?
It was this weird, like relaxed, but nervous thing because at the time I'm living with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my father had a lot of health issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very nervous about that. I was the like neurotic one in the
Mm-hmm.
household, like, let me go shopping for you, let's try and get stuff delivered. Like I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
minimize my parents, and really, if I'm honest, my dad, from leaving the house at all.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
which is difficult, and I don't know, I know you know my father. I don't know if you've seen the stubborn
Yeah.
side.
No, I haven't. I haven't never had to. I never had to stop him from going anywhere. So yeah, I imagine that
Right.
could be tough. Yeah.
That was, I was taking a little heat, like, you know, you're telling me what to do and blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, I'm telling you what to do. Like you're gonna stay inside and da 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 da. And there was a little
Yeah.
comment, but so there was that. But if I'm honest,
Mm-hmm.
oh, then there was the thing where I felt like Oh wow, I totally forgot about this. I
Hmm.
felt like the state and the city should have subsidized childcare. I felt like they should have come up with some sort of plan. That was my big thing at that particular time, because talking to
Mhm.
parents who were like, okay, we're staying home, but I've got to work. I've got to physically, there's
Yeah.
still parents who have to physically go to work. It
Right.
was the
Right.
first time as a teacher where I felt
Mhm.
like we weren't usually we're the class who's always making the sacrifices, and we were making some, but we got to keep our jobs
Right.
and we
Right.
got to work from
Right.
home. So I'm rolling over my pajamas, throwing on a nice shirt, teaching.
Right.
Um, and as difficult as that was, I felt very privileged that I was able to just roll over, hop on a screen, and teach,
Yeah.
knowing that the kids that I'm teaching, their parents are like struggling to figure out this whole,
Yeah.
system. So on the one hand, I felt very privileged, and then I felt nervous about my dad, and I felt bad for the parents and the families that I was serving. So
Right.
I was all over the place.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. Yeah, no, there was a lot. There was a lot of emotions to explore during that time for sure.
Yeah.
Now, as you talk about being nervous for your dad, you're saying, hey, don't go anywhere. You trying to tell me what to do, and it's interesting because my father passed when I was like 30, essentially. So I didn't really have the experience. Plus, he was in Panama. I didn't really have the experience of that transition to where people talk about like the child becomes the parent and all this kind of stuff. I'm wondering what that piece specifically was like. Like, yes, you're saying it was driven by nervousness, but what was it like to be saying to your father, "Don't go anywhere"? What was it like to have him come back? Like that piece. How did that play out for you?
We kind of had. So I've only stood up to my father probably twice in my entire lifetime. Um, the first time it was about dieting. And I even
Hmm.
said that to him. I said, we're here arguing, but think about, Dad, this is the first time I'm arguing with you, and it's about your health. It's because I love you, right?
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
that I think me standing up to him then
Hmm.
helped me during COVID, because it was like, I love you. Like it's
Here
not
we
a,
go again.
it's
Hmm.
not a like. I'm not trying to be the man. I live in your
Right.
house right now. Like,
Right.
so he was actually receptive, but it still was it wasn't like, you got to do this, Dad, you got to do this. It was more like a reminder, like, okay, I feel you, but let me just handle this. Okay, I feel you, but it was more like him
Hmm.
adjusting than me having to
Hmm.
like force things. And it was my mom too. My mom wanted to go out, and I was like, you can't go out either. Like,
Right. Right. Right.
let me
Right.
just handle this stuff. So I felt, how things work out, but I
Yeah.
felt fortunate that I didn't have to have that much of a fight, and
Hmm.
maybe got a little more time with them,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
So as you say it in those terms, it was a little more time. Obviously you would have wanted more time.
Have
Um, so you know, yeah, I remember. I'll share this piece because it's unique to our connection.
right,
Uh, that I wasn't one of the people. I would my Maya and Daphne, who my wife, were outside. Were the ones who were outside and saw
right,
the ambulance come, to your house.
right.
Um, and I specifically, and I did want to share this with you. I specifically remember them coming inside, and that it, the whole house was unsettled at that point. And it's interesting because we've all been very friendly and whatnot, but it wasn't like, we were doing holidays together. But we just had a respect back and forth.
Right.
And I just remember like it was very much like getting news about a family member. Like it was just sort of like, well, what do you mean? And then I kept asking questions. They were like, we don't know. We just saw, and I was like, but what do you mean? Like what's going on over there? So I guess sharing that and just letting you know that, that piece that, we really were concerned. I guess what was it like on your side, literally on your side of the street, as you realized something wasn't right?
Well, that was the second or third ambulance. Like,
Oh
There were
wow.
2 nights
I didn't know
before it,
that.
so and he was out of the hospital. He was in the hospital before that. So he was
Oh.
in the hospital. It wasn't COVID. It was some again health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Came back home, and then he wasn't being responsive. And
Mm.
so the first night the ambulance came, took him to the hospital. They said he was fine, brought him back. I can't remember if it was 2 more times or 1 more time, but he had gone back
Mm-hmm.
and forth.
Mm.
And even that time, so when you saw him, that's when things were scary. That's when the literal, so they got him in. They were on their way, and there were firemen left when the fireman said, "You should go up there." And he was trying not to,
Right.
you know, doom me, like take away my hope, but he was just saying, based on everything I've seen, you should go up there.
You should go.
And that was now, my father lived for months after that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember. Yeah.
So we that day I cried. I was in the bathroom, like I don't know what I'm gonna do, blah blah blah. I'm the oldest son, like
Mm.
things I have to take on, and I wasn't ready. And I remember saying that over and over, like I'm not ready, I'm not ready.
Mm.
That messed me up. And ooh.
Take your time, man.
So yeah, the ambulance thing, that was the second time, and that was really it. If I were to encapsulate a feeling, it's I just wasn't ready.
I'm not ready. Yeah. So, as you shared, there were, months in between, and anything you want to share about that time, I definitely would want to hear. I did want to ask, though, about your eulogy. There was, it seemed so important, and obviously I get that it was a funeral, it's a serious thing, but it wasn't just serious. It was, I got the sense it was important to you to stand up and speak on your father's life and his impact on you. And I'm just curious, was I reading into it? Was that, because it seemed like, I don't know, the energy was like, I'm doing this. Like it was, what I would say, you said like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. If I were writing this as a script, I would wonder like, I wonder if something happened over the months that allowed him to feel ready. And then you're going to see it at the eulogy that he's like stepping into this. Or was I, fabricating that?
I still wasn't ready at the eulogy.
Yeah.
I'm still not ready now,
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just wanted to share who he was. It wasn't really about me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm honest, unless it was my brother, my mother, I really didn't trust anyone else. I felt like everyone else who spoke on my father did a wonderful job in sharing their relationship with him. But I wanted to share, and I asked my aunt, his sister, and my mom. They all read it, of course, and my brother, and I wanted to make sure what they wanted was in, like, because that's what I wanted. Like like Kirk and Daryl, the guys who spoke about him, knew him. Like those are his boys. I'm not trying to realize that in any way, but they met him when he moved to California, and my mother knew him as a high schooler. And, my aunt knew him as a kid, and I wanted, he wasn't just my dad. I wanted him, I wanted to share his story from the beginning to the end, as selfish as that is. I don't know, no one wants to hear someone's whole life story. But he was worth it. He was worth it that you hear his whole damn story because I thought he was amazing. And that's my dad. That's how I'm going to feel. But that's really what it was, if I'm honest. So the whole ready, no, I'm not ready now. There's still things where I'm like dealing with. And I just wanted to share who he was. And I wanted my mom to be represented, and I wanted his family to be represented and how they saw him.
Right. Now I'll share that, and this things that come back to you. So I was, as I would be sometimes when the kids were younger, heading out of here with my big old duffel bag and my bag of footballs, and and dumping everything in the car. And I still remember if you go up on the balcony, and he was like, kind of like, yeah, I've been there, and we talked for a minute, but it wasn't until people spoke at the funeral that I realized, like, oh, he made it seem like, oh yeah, I helped out with a team or two. I'm like, this dude coached a lot of people over a lot of years.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about that, like both being coached by him and then seeing the impact he was having on your peers. Yeah, I mean, it clearly was big.
Yeah, I didn't. You know what's funny? And you know how it is, man. The privilege, you take your privileges for granted. I remember from the time I was 13, and this is my mother too. I've had so many because my mother's a teacher. She's taught in Inglewood for 40 years. So my life as a kid, and even as an adult, is people walking up to me going, "Hey, how's your mama doing? How's your daddy doing?" And as a young black man, somebody going, "How your mama doing?" Those almost fighting words. But I had to embrace that because they literally were, my mom had shaped so many people's lives, and my dad too. There's people, I think about my college roommate. I think there's so many people who literally to this day, if they were to walk up to me like, yo, if they don't know my dad passed, they're going to go, how's your dad doing?
Right.
And genuinely want to know and I didn't recognize, because I had a dad and I had a wonderful dad. I didn't recognize he was busy being other people's dads.
Oh, wow.
I didn't recognize it. And when people would say that, I just thought, okay, my dad, you're making this connection. No, when I would go back and even talk to people like, oh no, your dad taught me this, or your dad, said this thing. I was like, but you don't know until you're an adult. You're just like, well, my dad's the coach, people are gonna know him.
Right.
Right.
You're not
you know what I mean?
It's like, six. Yeah.
You're not thinking about, oh, did he really develop relationships with people? And he really did. Yeah, and he was my coach. He was my brother's coach. He, I don't know if this was you want me to, but he taught me to work hard at stuff through sports. Like I was in the minor leagues. I played for the Cubs, and when you're 7 and 9, even I know people say, the trophy era, everyone gets a trophy. It's not like that in my era too, because when you're a minor leaguer, everyone bats. So I batted. Baseball, there's only 9 positions. Only
right. There, yeah, you were in that. You were in the extra lineup.
I was in the extra. I was that bad. My dad never, and he was a natural athlete. Never got mad at me. He never, you said da. He just took me to the park. We're gonna hit some ground balls. We're gonna do that. Like he just, and then the next year I was the league MVP. And we won it, and I mean we won in spectacular. I got to have the Hollywood ending, like Orlando. I don't know if I said this in the thing about. Did I say this in the?
I don't think so. No.
So he was the assistant coach. The coach was there. Phillips was there. I was pitching. It's the championship game. It's bases loaded, full count. Like it's the full count, bases loaded, 2 outs.
Right. Like this is it. This is what we hang out in the backyard and pretend it happened.
This is the basketball equivalent of the 3-2-1 thing.
Right.
Ball's a little less exciting, people. And I struck the guy out, and my dad runs out and like puts me on his shoulders like it was that moment. But he helped me get there. He also baseball. I'm gonna indulge since you got me talking.
Nah, man, this is great.
When I was in 6th grade, they had this oratorical contest. And I guess then they were like, okay, Arian, the teacher said I should enter. So I told my dad. So my dad got Oscar Brown Jr. Do you know Oscar Brown Jr.?
Don't.
Look up Oscar Brown Jr. He's a Chicago treasure. He has a poem called The Signifying Monkey, which you probably heard Dolomite's version.
I do know. Right. Okay, got it. Okay.
Oscar Brown Jr. does a slightly cleaner version.
Okay, got it.
And he made me, and I heard by the way, this Oscar Brown, one day I'm on a different time, I'm going to put you up to Oscar Brown Jr. because you would dig it, and you can share it with your children. It's very cultural.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's even got a poem about slave auctions. It's deep. Anyway, yeah, it's deep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, anyway, my dad signifying monkey. So he made me do signifying monkey. He helped me rehearse it, and I performed it, and everybody's dying laughing. Like I had the whole auditorium, the teachers, everyone is dying. And I was in the oratorical contest. So
Yeah.
he coached me in baseball, but then he coached me in the oratory. Like he was just, and even then, it was just like, okay, my dad's making me do this thing. But then when I go and everyone's like cheering for me and blah blah blah, I was like, oh, my dad made me do this thing.
Right.
So he was very supportive in ways that I didn't appreciate till I was older.
Love that. Love that. Now it's interesting, and I do want to learn about Oscar Brown. That's interesting to me. There was another piece of reading that I ended up doing. You had done long before, but I ended up doing after the funeral. And there's a story about a seagull that I you can't necessarily recite it. It's a whole book, but I'm curious. It came up during the funeral and seemed so impactful that I literally bought it when I got home, and I read it like within the week.
Yeah, because it's reading. Yeah.
So I'm just curious. Yeah, could you share a little bit about that piece and how your dad used it to teach?
So the seagull, my takeaway, and I'm sure it's one of those books where you read it and everyone can have their own takeaway.
Sure.
Right? And it's short. I want to say it's like 80 pages. It's not a super long book. But my takeaway was you just do it for the fun. Like you do things, you enjoy life, and you don't worry about winning or losing all the time. Like you just do it to enjoy. You fly, like seagulls fly because they want to fly. They don't fly to be the fastest. They don't, And when we played baseball, that was always his thing. That's what I respect about him. Even why I respected when I got older was like, for him to be like, he was a good athlete. Most good athletes get disappointed when they don't see athletes perform well.
Right.
His thing, I don't care if we won or lost, did you guys have fun? Like that's why we're here. That was always his thing. And so to watch that, to me, was his thing with the seagull. And he was having fun coaching. I know I shared this part of the eulogy that, his whole thing was, I want to run with the team. Like the team runs, he's the coach who runs laps with his team. I just thought that was like, no, when I was a kid, I was just like, oh, my dad's trying to be cool.
Please
when
don't.
I hit my 20s, I was like, that's like the dope. Like that's revolutionary in coaching. I would say it. I don't know. I've never heard of another coach who said, I'm running laps with the team.
Yeah, no, that's a real. Yeah, no, it's a real. It says we, right? It says like we are a team. Like, okay, let's go then.
Right,
yeah,
let's go. That.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was at least my connection with Seagull is, are you having fun? And he was having fun. And I feel like he was having fun coaching me, and he was having fun, coaching my brother.
Yeah. Now you obviously, as we touched on, went into education. You work with kids. I know for me, when I've coached, I'll tell people, hey, when you experience X with me, that's this coach. And when you experience this with me, that's my dad. And when you experience that, like I can identify like pieces of them that come through. Whether it's the kids in your class having fun or otherwise, how would you describe the impact, if there's any, that his life, his way of being your father impacts your teaching now to where you're, really excelling in education?
His lack of I won't say it's like, okay, his background was in entertainment. He was an entertainment vice president, sales, on the sales side. What was so interesting is he said something so insightful when I was 19 taking my first ed courses. And if I'm honest, because I teach elementary school, it hasn't impacted my teaching, but it impacts how I see my kids. He said, he basically was like, he didn't like this college prep thing. Like how everyone go to college.
Right.
His thing was like, back in Chicago, the brothers who were gangsters, they own houses now because they became mechanics and they became plumbers. It was like, there's people who just don't like school. Deal with it. That institution of school isn't for them. Nothing's for everybody. and he was talking about how trade, the devaluing of trade jobs, and how those trade jobs, in many cases, I'm an educator, in many
Right.
cases, pay more than the jobs where you go to a university, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see my 8, 9-year-olds, and it's tough as a black man, because especially in black schools, there's just like, go to a black college or go to college. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
black people, if I'm honest, we're very traditional in a lot. Like, we're way, in my opinion, way more traditional than white people in this country.
It's really interesting, and that's a whole conversation.
That's right. But I just think, and it's for
I
our
agree.
safety, and it's for, and I think it's a safety thing. But that's like you said, it's a different conversation. But I feel like my dad was very foresighted in that wasn't a thing to him. And it's because, he didn't have a college. He went to college on a scholarship, but he dropped out, and he obviously was able to become successful after that anyway.
Absolutely.
But I think that probably played into his thinking, like, you don't need a college education to be a good person and be a financially successful person.
Right.
And so when I'm working with kids, I walk this, I'm always in schools where they're pushing college, and I do too. I set my kids up to be academically successful so they can do whatever they want, including college.
Yeah.
But I like, if a kid tells me they want to do something that doesn't require it, I want to support that. So I think to that extent, because kids come in, I'll never forget, I was teaching at this hoity-toity private school in Santa Monica, and there was this kid whose dad was a director of children's films, right? Like, his dad was the man. And this other kid, this black kid's dad, comes in his mailman outfit. And the kid who's like the son of the director goes, "How come you don't wear a uniform?"
I love it. I love it.
Like, the mailman's the man to this kid, right?
Right.
And that's good. Like, I don't know. There's something to be said about the sovereignty of everyday people, right? Like, everyone wants to be a king and queen. Everyone wants to be. So I feel like my dad really tapped into that and connected me with that. Colleges and everything, and these things we ascribe to that give people value and prestige, that's not what it's about.
In the work I do, and we've talked a little bit about my coaching, what you just described is, it's at the core, right? Because it's align who you are, where you are, and where you want to go. And part of what concerns me sometimes with what you're describing, I have a problem, I went to school, but
me too.
I don't like it, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't like the idea of it being prescribed or people being judged for not having done it. And I do that very much resonates with me, because there's so many elements to it, man. Doing well in school is its own thing. And I know people who were outstanding in school who have not been outstanding since school. Right. And it's because there are specific skills and ways of being and whatever. So yeah, that really resonates. And yeah, obviously your dad, sorted all that out. What beyond that, did he have any thoughts on you becoming an educator? How did he feel about that piece? Obviously your mom was.
I don't, if I'm honest, I don't know. I never asked him directly, how do you feel about me being a teacher? I feel like him and my mom were like, live to be happy and don't sell out. Like, that was like,
I like it. Good rules.
Happy, don't sell out. I think he'd have been cool with whatever I did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if he was especially proud. If I'm honest, I'm just going to keep it real. I don't know if he's like, my son's a teacher, and I don't know if he felt that way.
Got it.
I felt like, oh, well, my son's doing what he wants to do on his terms, and I respect him for that.
And I'm that. Got it. Yeah. And you mentioned, as we were talking, I really thank you for, the way you've shared. And, I shared with you that recalling losing my dad, and it can come up in new ways. And you're like, I had no idea I felt like that about Chevy Impalas, but apparently I'm emotional about a Chevy Impala all of a sudden, whatever it is. When you talk about still not necessarily feeling ready, what are some of the things that now going forward you're building for yourself, you're thinking about in terms of who you want to be, maybe in terms of not filling his shoes, but sort of taking on some of what he dealt with. But even beyond that, like as you're coming out of this phase of grief, a few years of that and processing, what are some of those pieces for you?
All the shit excuse me, all the stuff he managed.
You can curse, that's cool.
Okay. Managing this house. Like
Mm-hmm.
my brother making sure, okay, you got to take care of the pool. You got to, you got to, you know what I'm saying? And him
Mm-hmm.
having relationships with other people. And him he was a he was very good at striking the balance of being a wonderful provider, but being present.
Mm.
I remember, again, I told you I taught this hoity-toity school, and I would
Mm-hmm.
watch relationships these kids had with their very, very rich parents,
Right,
and then
right.
come up and be like, I'm so grateful for my childhood, like to be around but
Mm.
like uber rich families, and be like, well, I got to see my dad every day, and my
Right,
dad was a baseball coach, and my dad, you know what I
right,
mean,
right,
like,
right.
but at the same time, grew up with a lot of privilege and a lot of things, physical things, if
Mm-hmm,
I'm honest.
mm-hmm.
Um, so how do I strike that balance of I want to have good relationships with people and be a good provider and be able to take care of my family? Like, that's what I struggle with. And just him, just physically, like, I don't know if I want to ask you this. Well, I'm going to
Sure.
share what I'm going through and ask if you went through the same thing or go through the same thing. I
Yeah.
literally, my mind is still convincing me that he's not here. And
Yeah.
by that, I mean, so like, I'll have dreams where he didn't die.
Mm.
Did you ever have
Mm-hmm.
the dreams where your parent
Yep.
didn't die?
Yeah. Yeah. That and once I had a dream where I was the only one who could see my dad in the dream. And he didn't say a word until everybody else went away.
That's a thing. He rarely talks.
Mm-hmm.
It's this thing I've noticed, and what I've rationalized it as, oh, my mind. This is my mind's way of convincing me that he's really gone, because in the dream
Mm-hmm.
world he's not gone. Like, it's like I
Mm-hmm.
can't deal with it. Like, I mentally cannot deal with the fact that he's gone, and so
Mm-hmm.
when I'm dreaming, it's like my dream is like my subconscious way of like saying goodbye,
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
and over.
Yeah.
But those dreams are a trip where I'm just like, I had one a couple days ago, and I was like, we're
Mm.
watching TV or something. We're watching something. I can't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then your mind slowly reminds you, oh no, he's not here. And then you get another day. No, no, he is here. He's sitting right,
He's right
like,
there. I'm looking at him. Right, right, right.
I'm looking at him. So to the point of the I'm not readiness, those dreams,
Mm-hmm.
they're still convincing me that he's gone. Like, I still don't believe that he's gone. And yeah, and then not ready. Yeah, again, just being a provider, like, he just put it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say this. The one, I think I can say this without crying. This will be my first time saying it without Mr. Loose, but I was the last person to talk to my dad, to like where he was
Mm.
still aware and conscious and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
nurse came in. She was like, let me share something first that I should
Okay.
say to give everything context. My grandfather died when my dad was like 9, like
Oh wow.
very young.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
my dad was one of those guys who was on a mission. I'm going to be an excellent father, because he missed his father.
Right.
So he was
Right.
like,
He
I'm
knew
going to
it.
be. I signed up for this. Like, I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other thing. That's another context. Like, he really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed being a dad. That's one thing I know. So
Mm.
the nurse comes in, and she goes, do you have kids? And I go, no, I don't have kids. She was like, well, you make an excellent father. I was like, why do you say that? He's like, well, the way you come in, you look out for your dad, and da da da. And because me, my brother, and my mom, we were taking turns, you
Sure.
know,
Sure.
coming in at the hospital. And I just said, if I'm ever have the luxury of being a father, if I'm ever good at it, it's because of him.
Oh wow.
And he turned over and he was like, thank you. That's
Oh
the last
wow.
conversation we ever
Oh
had.
my. Wow. That is
Yeah.
beautiful. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. That is
Made it through
that
without.
is so wonderful. Oh wow.
That's
What a
like the
powerful moment.
that's the best. I have a bunch of cool. That's the good thing. They say, let the memories, like, whether it's that baseball story of him coming
Right.
out, or like,
Yep.
I got to have some fucking Hollywood fucking moments with my
That's
dad,
awesome, man. I love
like,
it.
that you could write. So
feels good to have celebrated some of that with you. So
Thank
I just one last question is the last few years, COVID, for some people it's statistics, for others, this was literally hit home,
you.
But I feel somehow, even beyond COVID, like I'm I feel like I can't even go on Facebook. It feels like I'm gonna be sending somebody some condolence. Like it just feels like a lot.
Right.
And I'm wondering, as we, sort of are processing that piece, what you would share, not necessarily advice, right? It could be I had this experience, I didn't have that experience, but what would you share with someone who has recently lost their parent or recently lost a family member, where they're in that early stage you're talking about, that you would share from 3 months out? I mean, 3 years out.
Because I'm going through that. I have coworkers. I have one of my friends I work with just lost his dad. Um,
Mm,
this is one of them times where I'm just gonna say I don't know. Like it's just shitty. Like
mhm,
I'll tell you what I tell my coworkers, and I say, I know this is a really difficult time, and I don't want to be the 15th person in your face and rushing you and giving my condolences,
mhm.
but I'm present and I'm here if you
Yeah,
ever want
yeah,
to talk, and I mean that.
yeah.
And you know, um, but I really don't have, beyond that, anything I can share. I just think it sucks. And
Mhm.
yeah, I don't, and I'm
That's
willing to
real.
sit in the suck with you, but it just
Yeah,
fucking sucks. And there's
yeah.
nothing happy about the shit. Like, I know we want to celebrate, want to
Right,
celebrate,
right.
that shit is depressing and it's sad, and
Mhm.
and that's what I would share. That it's depressing and it's sad. Oh, I'll tell you what I would share,
Okay, okay.
and I might cry, but I'm gonna try not to. When I was going through this, I had this student named Mia Bella,
Mm.
and Mia Bella lost her father very young. Like she was in no, she was in first grade,
Oh, wow.
going into second grade, and she has a little sister. And I share with my kids, like, because we're all going, like, yeah, I'm losing my
Mhm.
father, but they're losing people in their family when we're going through
Mhm,
this.
mhm.
So I told, like, when my kids that I had kids for 2 years in a row, the kids that I told
Mm.
them not to worry about COVID watched me grieve my father.
Wow, wow.
So there's Mia Bella, and I can't remember what the context was. Did I ask for advice? Mia Bella said, just take your time and don't smile because people want you to smile. And I was like, she was just like, and Mia Bella's like, she's not a angry, um,
Mhm,
but she had the presence of mind and
mhm.
to tell me
I love
that
that.
don't rush through it and don't let people make you feel like you got to be happy.
Mhm.
And that is the one thing. And in fact, stand up for yourself. Say it's okay for me to sleep. It's okay for me to chill. Don't do too many drugs. Don't drink. Don't go to the
Mhm,
bottle if I'm honest. But like,
mhm,
be
mhm.
sad. You want to be by yourself. You want to sleep. Do that because you
Do
love
that.
that person, and that's the impact. If they weren't impactful, then you'd be able to walk around and be. But if that's
Mhm.
feel those feelings.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I would
love
say.
it.
Feel those feelings and be unapologetic by feeling it. Try and be nice to people as you're going through it.
Right, 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 right,
Don't let
right.
anybody tell you can't feel that way. Don't let everybody tell you got to go to the club or you got to go out drinking or you got to go do this. You ain't got to
Right,
do
right.
nothing but feel how you want to feel. And when you feel like going out and you feel like smiling, then do that. That's what I would.
Love it. So, what's really interesting? In both cases, in both things you're saying there, you're emphasizing presence. You're emphasizing be here now. If you feel like going to sleep, go to sleep. And also, I'm here now for you. If you need me, I'm here.
Right.
Let me know. So I love that as the final messages there. That's really powerful. Well,
Cool.
Arian, man, I could keep you on forever. I know you got more stories. I know you got more stories, but I want to keep you all night, man. I so appreciate you doing this interview and sharing some of that energy that I felt at your father's. I mean, it was overpowering to see the impact this man had had on so many people. I mean, during COVID, there was an overflow crowd. I was like, wow. I mean, that is, I was like, that is something. So just celebrating him and celebrating his legacy in you, man, because I have the utmost respect for you.
Thank you. I have the utmost respect for you, and thank you for giving me the space to do this. And I wish you healing, and we all heal and kind of get through and to the best of our abilities.
For sure, man. For sure. We'll connect in the spring when Ted and Beard and them get back.
Yes.
All right, man. Take it
all
easy.
Right. Peace.
Later. Peace. You know what time it is. It's time to walk the line. Check it out. This is what I want you to do. And it was so powerful to listen to Arian get into how he got to thoughts about presence when it comes to those hard times. Whether you think of it as grief, if it's a loss, this is a bad day, a moment. If we could just be there in that moment, if we can experience the feelings in that moment, whether we're the person who's fallen or we're the person who takes the moment to have the empathy and the awareness to pick somebody up. Being present. Failure is not fatal. Failure is not fatal. And I just hope that you can go through your day, and when something doesn't go right, that you can feel that and walk through that and accept the helping hands that come your way. And when somebody else falls, I hope you can be that person who reaches out that hand to say, I got you. You're gonna be okay. All right? All right. Now listen up. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on Instagram at AlignP. And you can come through We Align, our online community, at wealign.alignp.com. We have coming up on March 31st through April 2nd, Want to Be Starting Something, a conference. You come through, we're going to walk you through the Define the Line process. You're going to walk away with the workbook, you're going to walk away with the strategy, and you're going to walk away with 3 months free for our subscriber area, the Align Circle. And that is where we will be working with one another in community to move forward on our strategy, support one another, maybe hand out a couple of those helping hands or receive a couple that we were talking about today. So I'm glad you listened to the episode. I hope you'll come through and check out Want to Be Starting Something. I promise if you do, you'll be glad you did. And with that, you know what we're going to do. We going to get unstuck. We gon' be unstuck. We gon' live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck. Now, let's walk the line.